Pro Brick exclusive YouTube channel with Reverend Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist. I want to talk to both men and women about a superpower that you need to have. Probably more men, because women are survivalists and they seem to get through things a lot quicker than what men do. I wouldn't say they suffer any less when it comes to breakups and abuse, relationship abuse, for all the different reasons that it's there. But men seem to, they don't have the instinctive survival skills that what women have when it comes to relationship abuse, relationship assault, and the way in which a lot of people behave now as vampires, narcissistic vampires, covert, blatant, in the way in which they go about their relationships. A lot of it's dysfunctional now, and there is devastation in so many areas now, but a lot of these people are used to it. They don't know how to heal. They love being the victim. They'll take their victim stories from one relationship to the next. In fact, there's a community of people out there that pride themselves on being the biggest victim from what life can do to them. And there's a certain type of person that these people will prey on, but will not be able to harm. And that's the rare person that knows themselves, has worked on themselves, keeps themselves from abusers, and knows how to navigate somebody that is dysfunctional. You have all sorts of types. You can have people that are narcissistic yet empathetic, which is a covert narc. They'll come in as a victim, a perpetual victim, but underneath they'll hate people. They'll serve people in the community. This is how wonderful it is, how well disguised it is. In their jobs, they'll run around and serve disadvantaged people and all the rest of it. But on the other hand, they'll have a hatred, if be it a female towards men, and in some cases males towards women, by the way they've been treated and haven't been able to process it. Some people have been criminally abused, and those people have every right to take these abusers and try and get them put in jail. There's a lot of people running around our communities that should be in jail for the way they treat others, but they'll never see the walls of a cell. But there's a lot of perpetual victims out there, and there's also a lot of predators out there. The paradox is some victims can be predators within themselves, and the predators can often end up the victims. The twos and throws, depending on who these people engage and indulge on. There's many different power plays going on, and different people have different shields and ways in which they protect themselves from these abusers. Now, I don't think, for the most part, people realize how damaging they really are when it comes to relationships. And this will come back to, you have to look, if you find yourself in this situation, you have to look at the coffin, or the home, as it were, because these people return to their coffin like a vampire. And when the sun comes up, he'll default back, or she'll default back to her coffin or home, where they assess the supply that they've got, the blood supply or the emotional I'm using blood as an example of emotional and sexual supply. They'll recalibrate, they'll gorge that, they'll allow that to be processed in their system until they're ready to feed again. And that's where they calibrate, that's where they default. Now, this isn't new to humanity, but a lot of people's values are way above all this, where you'll have these people, they've got their little tribe of dysfunctional children and the way in which they've been formed and all the rest of it, and nobody seems to know how to heal or really what's going on to get to exactly where they need to get. It's all a mumble jumble, and it's a competition to see who's the biggest victim, and they circulate around medications and in some cases alcohol, in other cases alcohol and weed, in some cases just weed. My daughter's a policewoman, and she said there's an epidemic of weed. They think, in some cases there's medicinal uses, but for the most part it's just abused. And the health and the physical and mental health results of this are absolutely catastrophic. A lot of people commit suicide on weed. This is a statistic that you have to search. It can actually bring you down to a place in which you just give in. And they say it's a euphoria sensation. The way in which it's like you're rewarding yourself to commit suicide. So just take that on board if you do are around weed users. I don't advise anything like alcohol, weed, or medications unless strictly and authoritatively subscribed. But let's get back to conscious dating, conscious relationship interplays. A lot of these people are just looking for people they can prey on and feed their lust and then return to their coffin. They don't want a long-term relationship. They don't want to really be caring or running after anyone. They just want to get their supply, come out and get their supply, and return to their dark place, their dark coffin where the light doesn't have to shine on them, where nobody's accountable, where they can take their drugs and drink their alcohol. It's actually, they're functioning, a lot of these people are functioning addicts, be it sex addicts, medicinal alcohol and weed using addicts, usually all of the above. Some have selective uses of the substances, as in some won't like alcohol, some won't like weed. They'll be in a relationship with someone who takes alcohol, so that justifies the use of their weed, and vice versa, whilst both on medications, etc., mixing the substances with those, therefore accelerating their sex drive and causing their emotions to be absolutely fried. These people don't know what day it is. They usually got no self-awareness. They're just able to function in these states. It's quite theatre. The theatre of this, when you're involved with someone like this, is absolutely extraordinary. But you'll find for the most part they keep you hooked by being a perpetual victim. Life's never kind to them. They've always got some kind of ailment or issue. They usually got serious physical consequences by the abuse of the substances that they take. They've got no clue of what it's doing to them because they're too interested in getting their next indulgence. And it goes on and on and on. In these houses, the mentality is stabilized only by the supply of the substances. Otherwise, everybody goes back into a victim state. They turn on each other. They are covert narcissistic, even within their houses, remaining on silent on issues that need to be resolved. and things just build up, and everybody's psychologically ruined. They're sarcastic, they're egotistical. You can tell by their sense of humor that something's not right somewhere, that things aren't resolved. And if you listen carefully to what these people say when you first meet them, you'll be able to tell if they're sex addicts, what their motives are going to be, how far they're going to go into the relationship before they sabotage it and rely on your tolerance to stay around. They like people to chase them after they've hurt them. They like people to, they push people beyond the norm because within the relationship because they don't function right, and it's difficult for them to understand if somebody hangs around because they're really not used to it. They usually married people that are weak and that will just see. A lot of people don't want to fix things. They say they do, but they don't, because they're empowered by the gratitude you get for having problems. Now, take a female that's a man-hater, but has to be satiated by a man. Right? Take one of these females. She's a perpetual victim. She hates men, yet she submits to them to grandiose herself as a victim. That's her greatest form of exhilaration. She loves being the victim, but rescuing the victim by punishing. It's so twisted and warped. You have no idea. They're constantly harming themselves, nicotine use, medications, because they can't psychologically resolve themselves. You have to understand this. There is no resolve for these people. So you find yourself caught up with one of these, your best weaponry is to be able to recognize what's going on here, because people will disintegrate into these vampire-like, instinctive, prehistoric, as it were, origin behaviors without the moral of and disguise of modern day decencies. Once you're behind closed doors with these people, and possibly yourself, this is where instincts come out and morals are put to the side, and it's just a fest of emotional and psychological and sexual feeding amongst each other. I know that sounds horrible, and it is, because if you attach to one of these people, and they're everywhere, they're the majority, you're going to be hurt. You're going to be psychologically assaulted and abused, because it's a wicked game that people like to indulge in. And then they return, they will suck the life out of you, sexually and emotionally. They'll tell you they love you and all the rest of it, but they only to return back to their coffin, back to their dwelling, where all the dysfunction is, where they can be a perpetual victim again. But they're full of the source of somebody outside that chaos. So on the one hand, they're a victim. On the other hand, they've got what they've wanted. And then on the other hand, they are hoping that they've left or created a victim out of the person that they've been with, because they're not going to cooperate with you. And the superpower of this is what really bends their brains, is not to attach, not to be not to be like them. They cannot comprehend how you can go through life and not be a victim and succeed. They cannot work out how that works. They don't know how it works. How could somebody not attach to me? What they haven't got is a correct measure of themselves. They've got a false, grandiosed idea that everybody's going to remember them forever. They don't realize how their behavior is betraying them. That's why they have nothing. They can't work out. They've got no self-awareness. They cannot recognize their own dysfunctions. They don't want to. They're too busy masking it all and covering the pains up with medications and other substances, as I mentioned earlier. And it goes round and round and round and round until they're worn out, and a lot of these people end up alone. They might get a good supply here and there, or they'll have some contact here and there, but in the end it's not worth it for them because it's too damaging. You cannot attach to these people. They're sexual. They know how to carouse. They think that their body parts are going to be a magnet, and that you will be, engrossed and indulged in and idolizing what they have and who they are. They got no self-awareness. They got no awareness of you. You'll find this. They're constantly... See, once they've got what they want, they return to their coffin, and you won't see them or hear from them usually again until they return. And they'll return to a source that they know works. They don't find these sources very often. But bit by bit, they wreck it. They don't know how to function properly in a relationship. They've never been accountable enough to do that. It's quite theatric. So you have to have your Van Helsing on. You have to have your discernment on to be able to recognize these vampires, these emotional and sexual vampires, because they will not attach to you. They're not these types of people. They'll attach to a certain extent, enough to keep you convinced to give them supply. But once you expose them through unresolved, they won't ultimately resolve anything. You'll see they'll carry unresolved for months and years, and rather than confront it, they'll leave the relationship in 5 seconds flat. If it is a relationship, if that's what you call it. I call them just exchanges, physical exchanges and emotional exchanges, because that's all they are. They got no fight. They're just indulging themselves. This is Reverend Dr. Jason W. Morrison on the ProBrick exclusive YouTube channel. I'll do another one on this. Bye for now.